AI now consumes more electricity than an entire nation. It sounds impossible at first, but the truth isn't found in headlines or government reports. It is found in places most people never see. Anonymous buildings, windowless and quiet from the outside, stretch across acres like the factories of a new industrial age. Inside them, the only light comes from rows of blinking LEDs and the glow of machines that never stop. The moment you step through their doors, you understand something immediately. You are no longer in a metaphorical cloud, you are standing inside it. There are no voices here, only the sound of electricity. Thousands of servers stacked floor to ceiling hum with a steady mechanical rhythm, like the heartbeat of the digital world. Warm air pours out from fans that never rest, the heat building with every calculation, every message sent, every photo stored, every line of code executed. These machines do not simply power social media or store forgotten memories. They drive something far more demanding. Artificial minds. Systems like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Copilot that process billions of human thoughts, questions, and conversations every single day. A single ChatGPT prompt can use up to 10 times the energy of a Google search. Generating one AI image can consume the electricity needed to fully charge a smartphone. Individually, these numbers feel small. Together, they create a rising wave, a surge of demand among crashing against global power grids at the same moment governments are pledging net zero by 2050. AI, the technology we believed would help optimize everything, is quietly forcing nations to burn more energy, emit more carbon, and stretch infrastructure to its limits. The question is no longer whether AI will reshape our world. It already is. The question now is whether the world has enough power, literally, to sustain the intelligence we are creating. How did we get here? And why is AI pushing electricity and water consumption to levels we were never prepared to handle? To understand why AI is colliding with net zero goals, we need to step back and look at the long history of how human progress has always depended on energy. Every major technological revolution has stood on top of an energy revolution. The steam engine reshaped the world because coal made it unstoppable. The factories and assembly lines of the 20th century rose because electricity reached every city and every home. Even the internet grew not only because of software, but because natural gas and global supply chains made massive server farms possible. And every time we improved efficiency, we consumed more. Economists call this the Jevons Paradox. The idea is simple. Making a resource more efficient does not reduce demand. It increases it. When steam engines got better, Britain built more ships and more factories. When chips became more efficient, we did not shrink data centers. We built entire cities filled with them. As governments gathered in Paris and announced net zero targets for 2050, a different revolution was already underway. Amazon, Google, and Microsoft were building hyperscale data centers, the digital power plants of the 21st century. At first, they handled basic tasks like storage and video streaming. But as the world moved online, these buildings grew larger and hungrier. By 2019, training a single large AI model could emit as much carbon dioxide as 5 gasoline cars running for their entire lifetimes. At that time, generative AI was still niche. Most people had never typed a prompt or heard the word transformer. Then, in 2022, ChatGPT was released to the public. Suddenly, the entire planet began sending questions to the cloud, and the pattern repeated itself, just like every other moment in technological history. A breakthrough appeared. Demand exploded, infrastructure strained, energy systems bent under the pressure, and society scrambled to catch up. When CNBC visited a data center in Silicon Valley, the cameras captured what numbers alone cannot express. You can feel AI. The heat radiating from the racks, the heavy chilled air being pushed through the aisles, the constant low vibration of thousands of GPUs working together. There are now more than 8,000 data centers around the world. The largest cluster is in the United States. But the industry admits openly that it is not enough. AI demand is not rising in a straight line. It is rising exponentially. Forecasts show data center electricity demand growing 15 to 20% every year through 2030. Not because humans are using more internet, but because machines are using more intelligence. The world built an electrical grid for the social media era. AI belongs to a different era entirely. It is industrial, it is constant, and it is insatiable. As AI expands, a disturbing pattern begins to emerge. Before ChatGPT, data centers consumed roughly 2.5% of America's electricity. Now, projections suggest that by 2030, data centers could consume up to 16% of the entire U.S. power grid. That is not a small adjustment, it is a fundamental shift. This is the electricity consumption of more than 2/3 of all American homes, funneled into clusters of buildings that most people will never see inside. A single large AI data center can draw 64 megawatts of power. Some new facilities are aiming for 100 megawatts or more. One building can consume enough power for tens of thousands of households. Big tech companies used to rent space from operators like Vantage data centers, but AI workloads grew too large and too unpredictable. So companies like Google and Microsoft began building their own massive, hyper-optimized campuses. The environmental impact was immediate. Google reported a 50% increase in greenhouse gas emissions from 2019 to 2023. Microsoft reported nearly 30% growth from 2020 to 2024. Both companies emphasized how efficient their data centers were. But efficiency cannot outrun exponential demand. This is the Jevons Paradox happening again, this time with artificial intelligence. You make chips more efficient and AI runs more experiments. You reduce power per inference and the world sends more queries. Every gain becomes fuel for more consumption. Governments plan their net zero goals under the assumption that electricity demand would grow gradually. But AI introduces an entirely new category of load. It is a constant, always-on, non-negotiable form of demand. You cannot turn AI off. You cannot delay an AI model training by 6 months. The industry moves too fast. In Kansas City, Meta's AI data center forced officials to reconsider closing a coal plant. Plans to retire natural gas are being delayed in several regions. AI will scale the moment more GPUs become available, and companies will secure energy by any means necessary. As utilities reach their limits, data centers migrate toward regions where electrons are easier to harvest. The Midwest with strong wind power, the Southeast with abundant land, areas where old coal plants can be converted to natural gas, and regions near nuclear facilities. Santa Clara was once the heart of American data centers. Today, it is slowing down because the local utility cannot deliver more power. So developers move to Columbus, Ohio, Atlanta, Georgia, and rural parts of Virginia. Even if the United States could generate unlimited clean electricity, the grid cannot deliver it. The grid is decades old. Transformers average nearly 40 years of age. There are 60 to 80 million transformers across the country. When they fail, the consequences are immediate and severe. Data Center Alley in Northern Virginia, which handles an estimated 70% of the world's daily internet traffic, had to pause new data center connections in 2022 because the grid could not safely deliver more power. During summer heat waves, utilities must choose between requiring residents to turn off air conditioning or asking AI companies to pause training runs. Some operators volunteer for load shedding and disconnect from the grid temporarily, using their own generators. Transmission expansion could help, but it is slow, expensive, and politically difficult. A single project can cost $15 billion and take a decade to complete. Local communities resist because they do not want higher electric bills subsidizing AI. AI is scaling faster than the world's ability to power it, and much faster than government's ability to regulate it. We have seen versions of this crisis before. In the 1970s, the world learned how fragile its dependence on oil truly was. Gas lines stretched for blocks, inflation surged, energy became a geopolitical weapon. In the 2010s, crypto mining pushed local power systems to their limits. Towns struggled to handle sudden spikes of electricity demand. From rows of machines minting digital coins, AI repeats the pattern but on a scale far larger, and it introduces another problem. The limiting resource is no longer just electricity, it is also water. Every server in a data center converts electricity into heat. To keep these machines alive, that heat must be removed. Many cooling systems rely on chilled water, but water is becoming more valuable than oil in many regions. Researchers estimate that by 2027, AI workloads could require 6.6 billion cubic meters of water each year, more than 4 times Denmark's annual water withdrawal. A study found that 10 to 50 ChatGPT prompts indirectly evaporate as much water as a standard 16-ounce bottle. Training GPT-3 in Microsoft's U.S. data centers may have evaporated around 700,000 liters of fresh water. In drought-stricken Chile, protests forced officials to partially revoke Google's data center permit. Uruguay faced similar backlash. Communities questioned why scarce water should be used to cool servers owned by foreign corporations. Some companies attempt alternative cooling methods. Evaporative cooling saves electricity but consumes vast amounts of water. Others avoid water entirely and use massive air handling systems. Microsoft even experimented with submerging servers underwater, but the project was halted. A promising path is direct-to-chip liquid cooling, which brings coolant directly onto the silicon package. This reduces the need to cool large volumes of air, but retrofitting existing data centers is expensive and slow. The industry is also working to reduce compute requirements for AI models. Companies like Scaleflux design memory and storage systems that compress data in hardware, avoiding the need for general-purpose CPUs. ARM-based processors such as AWS Graviton use significantly less power than traditional x86 engines. NVIDIA's Grace Blackwell superchips combine GPUs with ARM CPUs and can run AI workloads on dramatically lower power. ARM estimates that data centers using its chips can reduce total power consumption by 15%. At global scale, that 15% equals billions of extra ChatGPT queries or the electricity needed to power millions of homes. Another shift is AI on-device. Instead of sending every request to the cloud, devices like smartphones and laptops now process many tasks locally. Every on-device inference reduces demand on the grid and reduces the water evaporated to cool distant GPUs. But even with all these innovations, the fundamental conflict remains. Governments promised net zero. AI demands more power than those plans ever anticipated. AI's collision with net zero is not a mistake. It is the pattern of human progress repeating itself. We invent something powerful. We scale it as quickly as possible, and only later do we realize the cost. Steam reshaped industry but filled cities with smoke. Oil connected the world but created dependency and carbon emissions. Nuclear power unlocked enormous energy but carried enormous risk. AI extends human intelligence, but it also strains the systems that sustain modern life. Electricity, water, cooling, and infrastructure are no longer background concerns. They are now the limiting factors of the intelligence age. Governments can ignore the numbers and allow AI to grow unchecked. They can slow innovation with regulation, or they can choose the most difficult path of all. Rebuilding and modernizing the grid, expanding clean energy, managing water responsibly and ensuring AI models justify the resources they consume. Technology does not remove limits, it simply moves them. We traded the scarcity of human expertise for the scarcity of electrons. We traded the slowness of human learning for the speed of machines that require constant cooling and water. Every new capability brings a new cost. AI is transforming the world. That part is inevitable. What is not inevitable is whether our infrastructure can keep up. Inside a data center, another rack of GPUs spins up. Another model begins training. More electricity flows, more heat, more water, more pressure on the grid. Your screen displays an answer in seconds, but behind that instant is a vast machine powered by power plants, substations, transformers, cooling systems, and millions of gallons of water. We are living in the era of artificially amplified demand. And whether AI helps us reach net zero or becomes the force that breaks that promise will depend not on how smart our models become, but on how wisely we choose to power them.